Hi, Maria.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing all right today. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi, Richard. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Maria. I'm doing well.
Hi, Jonathan.
Are you guys also having a pretty gray day in Stockton?
Well, actually, I'm all the way over in Vacaville, so I have no
Oh.
idea what Stockton looks like.
The sun came out around 3 o'clock.
Oh, yay. I feel like Fresno hasn't seen the sun in like a while. I feel like it's probably just been like a couple days, but to me that kind of feels forever.
Yes.
Is it going to be sunny tomorrow? Do you know?
I hope so, but I kind of don't think. We've been having some like pretty intense fog. I don't know about Stockton.
Yeah, because I'm about to do some outreach tomorrow, and typically people aren't so happy when you outreach with them when it's like a gloomy day.
Yeah, gloomy and cold. Best of luck. Actually, maybe it will be sunny. Fingers crossed.
I'm hoping.
What's Vacaville like right now?
Surprisingly, it's clearing up. I'm in an apartment complex, and so the sun is on the other side where we're at. We're on the side of the street, and then of course there's an inner part, which is where the inside parts of the things where the sun is coming from. It's fine, but what we get worse of is like the rain. When the rain happened, like last week, couple weeks ago. Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot about the Pacific Northwest right now. Like before things are getting like flooded, I think.
Mhm.
I think it's more like yeah, I think we have.
Yeah, the other option would be trying to copy it. And watch it that way. Now you're gonna have to copy it, copy. The network, I don't know.
Margo.
I don't know, what I would suggest, I don't know if personnel wants to do this, but is that file, this folder that they have, that we were looking at here, make a copy and put it on the south folder, and then put it all there, but I don't know if they want to do that.
And I see that it's 4 now, but I think we are waiting for a handful of people. I think we could definitely expect Matt at this meeting. So we'll go ahead and give it just a few more minutes.
Yeah, I can do it again now. I noticed. find out like how this.
And I'll go ahead and share. I think a lot of people are familiar with it,
So
but
you got-
the running
but
like
for the purposes
agenda,
of what we're
CSC developed
doing,
agenda.
we've got
I'll go ahead and drop that into the
person
chat.
that anytime you need anything in terms of your archive,
Feel free to open it if you can. It's got our agenda and like kind of like meeting objectives for today that Matt put together.
say that again.
Hi, everyone. For those of you just joining, we're gonna give it a few minutes. I think we're expecting some other people.
And I'll follow up with Rochelle.
I did drop into the chat our running Stockton Tree Subcommittee agenda.
All right.
I know we have been kind of getting into the practice, but there's a little link for sign in, so feel free to sign yourself in there.
Is someone filling it in the, is someone filling in the sign-in sheet?
So if you are all welcome to kind of open it up and fill it in, but if you don't feel comfortable opening the Google Doc or you want me to help out, like I'm totally happy to put your name in there as well.
Well,
Yeah, Margot, I think you and I are in the same fields at the same time or something, because I started and I saw that you over it. So you stay on cell 5 and I'll go down to cell 6 and start over.
Okay. But I can't change it.
Oh, you know what, Scott, maybe if you want to bring your email down, perfect.
Thank you.
Stephanie, this is Jeff Lincoln.
Hey, Jeff, thanks, I'll put you in there.
Stephanie, could you sign me in? This is Jeff Lincoln. I apologize.
Yes, no problem. And Richard, I see you as well, so I'll go ahead and drop your name into the attendance. And thanks for the reminder, Richard. We'll definitely, it's our habit to definitely send it out to our CSC. And then for some of these subcommittees where we, oh, I don't know if Richard actually is still here. I'll make the announcement when he comes back.
Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I was having trouble getting in. It's
Oh,
like,
and there he is.
we have a different Zoom link than the last time?
Yes, so I think this one should be a different Zoom link.
Will it be, you think it'll be different every time?
We can make it recurring if this CSC chooses to do like a recurring meeting. That's totally possible. Let me know how you want to do it. Otherwise, if it's not like, you know, if we don't know next month what's going on with it, then it'll be a new link.
Yeah, okay. I'm helping some other people get in. So sorry, give me 1 second to rally folks.
Yeah, sure thing. And we just, I went ahead and sent out the Google Doc for the agenda, and then we're, you know, for those of us in here, we're getting signed in as well. And then I'll go ahead and one of the last things I'll share is I'll go ahead and share our subcommittee page for the tree subcommittee, and that could be a reminder of what, you know, what kind of happened in our last meeting. In there posted is our draft vegetative barriers and urban greening CERT project plan, and then also an example from US EPA of their vegetative barriers planning guide.
Oh, cool. Did you guys talk to Ken over there? Somebody talk to EPA? Did I provide you with that? Leave it to me to forget that.
Aaron?
Oh, I was just trying to hear about where you got the US EPA vegetative barrier guide.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that was straight off from, I don't know, maybe EPA's website, or I'll be honest, I can't remember, but
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I had seen it. And I guess they've got a Region 9 guy who specializes in it, who's offered to help us when we get into design.
yeah, that seems to be the kind of the standard as far as how they're designed, where they go, what needs to happen. So we kind of adopted that as like for a barrier, basically.
Awesome.
Seems to
And
make sense. Seems to be the universal guide there.
Cool.
And if I could just share a quick response, Richard, apologies for kind of the later meeting notice. We'll definitely send you in advance the meeting documents and the meeting invites. Thank you so much to Margot for reminding me. With that, I think I can definitely reshare the links for all the documents today, but whenever you're ready, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to think, what I'd like to do is make sure everybody has access to the agenda. And so let me drop that in here. If you don't, thank you. Look at that, already handy. So if you'll recall, we sort of have an agenda template where we set up meeting objectives, and then we make sure that we sign in. So if you haven't before, please open up the sign-in sheet. And I just wanted to look through the last sign-in sheet to see who was missing. So it looks like we got most people here from last time, except we're missing some Air District staff. And then I also heard that, I know Doug was here last time, and I heard in the CSC meeting, he wanted to support as a co-lead. Does anybody know anything about that from the General Assembly? Okay, well, we'll wait for Doug to show up if he wants to do that. I'll just recap that in our last tree subcommittee, I offered to co-lead this. And then after the fact, Clifton, who is here, great. Clifton is also a CSC, a primary CSC member who's involved in our Transformative Climate Communities project. So he's kind of a good fit for this. And I had shared Clifton's offer to co-lead with Air District staff, but it wasn't something that the Trees Subcommittee had discussed yet, nor had we discussed Doug or Jeff. I think you said you were also, were you interested in co-leading or attending these meetings, Jeff? Okay, well, we'll wait. Maybe you can't hear us. But, oh, not you, Jeffrey Gamboni. I apologize. I was referring to Jeff Wingfield from the port. Had you made an offer, Jeffrey? We got two Jeffs.
Sorry, Matt, I'm in a loud place. I'm happy to help support any way I can.
Well, I think we've got co-lead, Jeff. I know you're ready to help, and so I appreciate that, but I think we have a couple of community co-leads that are CSC members. So if it's all the same to everybody else, we'll just keep it that way. And then, yeah, I think we should do a quick round of introductions once everybody's signed in. And so there's only just a handful of us on here. So why don't we popcorn and call on each other so we can get through this quickly, and just give us your name. If you're on the CSC, great. If you aren't, you're a supporting partner, that's great too. So my name is Matt Holmes, and I'm a CSC member representing Little Manila Rising, and I'm excited to be here. And so I'm going to call out Mr. Richard Blackstone to please introduce yourself as well.
Just Richard Blackstone.
Thank you, sir. You a Stockton resident?
No, I live in Lodi.
All right. Thanks for coming. Lodi, welcome. I'll go next to Miss Margot Prowse.
Hi, I'm Margot Prowse. I am a CSC member. I'm a resident and pleased to be on this committee. I have high hopes.
Hot dog. I'm gonna keep moving. I'm just gonna, is it okay if I follow around the way you're arranged on my board here? I'm gonna go with Stephanie next from the Air District.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Ng. I am an air quality specialist in the Community Strategies and Resources Department at the Air District.
Awesome, thank you. And next, Mr. Aaron Tarango.
Yeah, my name is Aaron Tarango. I'm a program manager in our grant and incentives department. one of the people that is kind of overseeing the drafting, submittal, and hopefully a successful implementation of these two programs here as we get going here.
Thanks, sir. And next we'll go to Mr. Scott Wall, our friend from Sacramento, or the
Hey, good
car.
afternoon. Yes, Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board, and I am the Air Resources Board liaison to the Stockton CSC. Glad to be here.
Great, thanks for being here. Next, I have my friend Brianna Garcia, who I've asked to join us tonight.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I am working on the TCC grant, doing the urban forestry, but the community engagement component of it.
Yeah, thanks. And I think I can help everybody explain. You guys remember TCC coming up a lot in our AB 617 conversations. The program's been going through a lot of reformulation, and we recently received approval to move those contracts and get that urban forestry project rolling. And Brianna is one of the project managers on that. And so is the next person on my screen, Mr. Nico Tamayo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicholas Tamayo. I'm also working on TCC, doing the urban forestry and workforce development components. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks. Mr. Gamboni, would you care to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm an arborist and a landscape architect of a small firm here in Stockton near the University of the Pacific. I'm involved with a group called Stockton Beautiful. We've been around for almost 30 years. And we do beautification projects around town. We've also collaborated with Puentes to plan and implement tree planting programs at the Port of Stockton, Stockton Unified School District, and I also help prepare the plan for Little Manila, the street tree planting plan for Little Manila, which was rejected by the city of Stockton. It was a huge scandal because they refused to maintain street trees. And they felt that the planting of crepe myrtles was going to be too big of a project for them to maintain, which is just a scandal and a huge disappointment. And we feel like that project should be revisited.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're recapturing some of it in TCC. I remember that episode. We had money for planting and maintenance for 10 years. And the question was, who's going to take care of it in year 11? It's like, well, it's your city. Moving right along, Mr. Nate Knott.
Good afternoon. Most recently, I'm retired, but most recently Director of Planning for the San Joaquin Regional Transit District. I spent about 25 years in public transportation. I still walk and ride the bus for a majority of my trips in Stockton. I'm an old environmentalist from Chico State, graduating way back in 1980. Worried about climate change before anybody had heard of it. A huge supporter of trees. And as far as people here, I've been affiliated briefly with Jeffrey Gamboni with the tree and decorations of the Miracle Mile District. I've been associated with Richard Blackston from Lodi. Was a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the San Joaquin Council of Governments for 12 years. I was with San Joaquin RTD for 17. A private company called Trailways Bus Company, which used to be a national competitor to Greyhound for about 5 years. So that's separate from my broadcasting and my teaching.
Thanks for coming, Nate. Lots of experience in the mix. Next on my screen is Miss Christie, Sue Christie from the city of Stockton. Speaking and reading at the same time. Sorry. You're muted, Sue. Okay, Sue, you're muted.
So sorry, I was talking to myself. I'm Sue Christie. I work at the City of Stockton and Parks Maintenance section, and I work as much as possible on tree initiatives.
Thanks so much. Moving right along, next on my screen is Miss Maria Mendez.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here representing Stockton Unified School District. I'm the Vice President of the board.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Mr. Clifton Maxwell.
Hi, everyone. I work for Puentes as an urban forestry specialist. Started on the CAL FIRE grant a few years ago with urban canopy renewal. I'm also a farmer, urban farmer, and livestock rearer. I do rotational grazing, holistic animal management, and I'm also a biochar enthusiast. So carbon sequestration is sort of my interest and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on my screen is Taylor Williams.
Hey, everybody. Taylor Williams, resident of the CSC. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Wingfield.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jeff Wingfield, Director of Environmental and Public Affairs at the Port. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Next, we have Brent Bucknam.
Hi, everyone. Brent Bucknam from Hyphy Design Lab, Oakland, California. We are an advocate and collaborator with Stockton and a bunch of other AB 617 communities on designing effective air filtration systems and urban greening, here to support Little Manila and everyone at the table.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Brent's been an ally for a while and has helped do some important National Science Foundation research on species selection to maximize vegetative barrier impacts or benefits. And so I just asked him to be here from the beginning to get an understanding of our funding mix and how we're trying to go about this. And next I see Matt Diaz.
Hi, everyone. Matt Diaz. I'm the Advanced Planning Manager for the City of Stockton.
Thanks for being here. Next, we have Grant Kirkpatrick.
Hello, Greg Kirkpatrick at the City of Stockton. I'm a program manager in the City Manager's Office, and I oversee the TCC implementation grant from the city.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And finally, we have Melissa Vargas from Catholic Charities.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Vargas from Catholic Charities Environmental Justice, and I'm joining on behalf of Jonathan.
All right. Thanks for being here. Sorry, I named your agency. And finally, we have Marlon Regisford. Care to say hi?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. My name is Marlon Regisford, Caltrans District 10, Planning and Local Assistance and Environmental Deputy.
All
Nice
right.
to see everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We're going to be looking at some maps, your wheelhouse. So great. So everybody's been introduced. Anybody I missed? Hot dog. Sorry if I'm going a little bit fast, but I've been in meetings all day that spend more time doing introductions than doing the work. So wanted to do a quick switch over, and I'm just going to share my screen, but everybody should have access to this agenda, which I'm going to drop in the chat again in case you joined us a little bit late. Oh no, that's the Zoom link. This is the agenda. Apologies, should be a Google Doc. Governments should learn about these. I think they're a good idea, Google Docs. So go ahead and get in there, but I'm going to share my screen so that you can kind of see what I'm pointing at. And hopefully you guys have all come with me now. And so we had the co-leads were objectives in the last meeting, and we had Matt and Clifton raise their hands for that, both CSC members, both involved in urban forestry. Obviously everyone, this is not a governing body, so we're just making recommendations back to the CSC, and hopefully who is co-lead doesn't matter so much as the work that they get done. Our goal for this meeting tonight was really to review these our incentive measures. We kind of talked about the structure of a subcommittee and how we would relate to the CSC last time. This time I really want to dive into the measures so that we can actually read what has been authorized by the governing board of Valley Air District, because we're going to have to come up with a plan that implements those measures that can be converted into a work plan that is consistent with Valley Air's understanding of these measures and that they can put forward to the California Air Resources Board, who will have to approve that plan. So we all like trees, and Clifton, I'm sorry, there's not going to be any goats or sheep or chickens in this experience for you. All right.
That's okay. We'll get there.
Okay, great. But my point is, this is there are restraints on how creative we get to be with these measures. And so I think it's important that we understand those measures. And then I think that'll take us a while, but I think what would be nice is to sort of scope out who we should be working with. And really what I always like to do is who isn't in the room. And so that's why we created this outreach database for multiple subcommittees. And we can just go around the room and we can pop out people's personal networks and assets that would be interested in supporting trees. Jeffrey Gamboni, you're gonna know more people out here than me. So if somebody wants to open that up and go into the trees tab while I'm blathering, feel free to start dropping the names and contact information in there for the people that you think we really need. And then finally, there's the nuts and bolts that we kind of all need to agree on, which is a work plan. When are we going to meet? Some of us had trouble getting in because I had left an outdated calendar invite. And so if we establish a regular meeting, Stephanie's promised she can help me set up a static link that we can always come back to the right spot right on time and not lose those precious minutes. So, figuring out when we want to do that regular meeting. Think about this idea of milestones. I'm really looking at how this committee relates back to the broader community steering committee, because we're going to need their help and we're going to have to bring them along with us if we want any of our ideas to go anywhere. And that'll involve, forecasting our needs to that committee and having them get back to us. So, key milestones for, finalizing our partners list, what we intend to do, we're going to have a report out at the December CSC meeting. And then, this was something I just made up. So these milestones, I made these up. So anybody can add something here. I thought we could take a look at finalizing what kind of street trees we think we want to work with. Hopefully our arborist can help me with that. And then this component here is the Valley Air Trees Project Work Plan. And some of these, they've done some of this work before, which is great. I don't necessarily know what's required for this work plan to pass muster. So I'm hoping if we don't get to that tonight, in future meetings, Valley Air staff will be ready to sort of marshal what it takes to get a work plan approved. Does that make sense to Valley Air folks? You guys know?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think I'll add maybe one thing to your discussion about the work plan itself. The work plan is something that we need to get approved. Basically, I wouldn't say in parallel, almost before this other stuff has happened, because we get the work plan approved. And then we start the process of basically, okay, let's go. We have it approved. We can start, really the process there to do this. And in the work plan, I think we discussed the main point too is an RFP. I'm assuming we're doing an RFP to get a contractor to do the work. We got assumption, right? That's what we're doing in Fresno, and we're going to do that in Shafter. Seems to make sense. So as a heads up, in there, we're also working on an RFP. We're drafting it right now for Fresno for both urban greening and redshift barriers. We're very close to presenting to those committees, which will give us a great starting point for this committee, because it kind of lets you know here's what's in the RFP, kind of how we see it flowing, and to maybe ask the people who are going to do the work to make sure it meets if they can do it.
Yeah,
right. How it's set up, which is very, very important. You hate to write an RFP, and then they're like, well, we can't do it that way.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I'm getting at is I think that the work plan almost is the almost number one to get an agreement on that. We send it to RP or ARB, get it approved. Then we start, let's go. I mean, it can be in parallel, but I do want to get that submitted, buy off from the committee here to get that submitted to ARB. I don't want to wait a couple of months from now, then we're kind of behind.
Agreed. Yeah, it can sit in Sacramento for a while, can it?
Well, I think that it will not in this situation. I'm crossing my fingers because it's already approved for Fresno and Chapter. So it's not brand new to them. So it should be a little easier, I hope.
Okay. Well, and I'm just, and other CSC members check me on this. And if I'm not seeing hands raised, please let me know. But we've really talked about these urban forestry and vegetative barrier dollars augmenting the broader TCC project here. And so, there's only so many people qualified to already be working on TCC. And so that really is the city. It's the city's project. They're in contract with the Strategic Growth Council, and I bet they're qualified to manage their own streets. Aaron, I'm happy to let you and, I think my recommendation is that we talk about furnishing this money in the most efficient way to that collaboration between the city and community-based organizations.
I agree 100%. Let's let people know what they're doing. Let's give them contract, let them do their work.
Great. Yeah. Awesome. And the really nice thing for anybody involved in the TCC process, when I show you the map later, you'll see that TCC is a complex restricted program. And hopefully these $617 are a little bit more flexible and can fill in the gaps there.
I have a question, Matt.
Yes.
So Aaron,
Yes.
you're saying that we need approval or not? So I'm not understanding what comes first. We need approval before we create a plan?
No, the plan is the approval from ARB to actually do the work essentially. So like how it works is you have this money from ARB and there's no like set, we'll say guidelines to fund it essentially from ARB as far as trees go. I'll say trees because it's easier. And so you have to get an approved plan from ARB to spend this type of money on trees in these communities. And so we want them to approve the plan. Here's the outline of what we're going to do. And then we get into more detail as far as RP, as far as that stuff goes. But you say, look, we're going to spend money on trees in Stockton. And here's generally the outline how we're going to do it.
So they don't need locations, they don't need specific trees.
No, they do not. And you don't want to do that because that's going to change. It's simply overarching view from top looking down. Here's what the community wants to do and give us approval to fund trees in the community. And then you have to do basic stuff in the plan, like how are you going to quantify it? Well, there's tools out there. You use like the iTree calculator to quantify the actual reductions and stuff, because you don't want to show reductions, right? So you want to, greenhouse gas reductions. There's some NOx, there's some stuff you get from barriers and whatever have you. So you would use established tools, which you have in the work plan we presented to the committee last time. It kind of uses those tools, and so the plan simply states, we will use these tools to quantify the emission reductions from this project was all said and done. And then it kind of lays out, well, it would pay for maintenance, it pay for, construction, pay for, the overhead of the agency going to do the work. And it lays out a kind of a plan how you would structure it essentially.
Great. Any other questions that hands I may not be able to see?
Yeah, I just want to briefly nail down. So like, we're not talking about in a work plan a level of specificity of like, this is 200 trees or this is 1,000 trees. It's like, we have like these particular things in place. It'll cover maintenance, it'll cover plantings, or this like not that level of depth of like output.
That is 100% correct. It's in the plan there. I think it's one of the links in the chat there. It basically lays out, we have $1 million to do this, and here's the outline how we're going to quantify, and here's how we're going to do it. But it doesn't go into finer details. That will be more in the RP and then the actual project itself when we get going there.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't want to lock ourselves into anything specifically in the plan, because what if we want to, we have to be able to modify and change as you go on. You might have to as things change, as we all know.
Yep. So if there are no objections, would it be all right if we proceeded to taking a look at each of these measures in order in the SERP? I'll share my screen, and I'll also drop a link if you want to scroll through your vegetative the paperwork on your own. Let me see. Oh, that's the project you shared. So maybe Aaron, I think I might confuse the matter. So the Urban Greening SERP Program Plan 9/20/2021. Is this a draft of the work plan?
Yeah, and I feel like
this is a draft of the work plan we would submit to ARB. And a couple of the things that are in the work plan itself are highlighted that we want to kind of go over with the committee to answer some of these things. If there's questions on it, if not, we'll say, okay, well, let's go. We can always modify it later. If we have to modify it with ARB, it's not the end of the world either. We can always modify it as well.
Copy that. Okay, so just so that everybody who may not be used to using these Google Docs, I'm going to continue to populate this with links, and I'm actually going to reduce some links thanks to a great map that Grant showed me earlier this week. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to use the agenda to open the SERP that has a live static link, on the Air District's website that anybody on this committee can rely on and look at for reference. So here's the agenda. And so I'm going to go to the SERP, and you can see that I've typed in the agenda what pages we can look for these on. So vegetative barrier 1, that's the measure title, and that's going to be on pages 63 through 65. So I follow that link and you can watch me scroll, or I can do it fast. One of these days, trees will be the first thing. But for some reason it's way down here. I guess that's not really a concern. So why don't we take a few minutes? I don't think we need to group read this, but let's take a few minutes and look through this, and maybe we'll take a few people's impressions of it and see if we can tease out concrete deliverables, Aaron, that are going to need to be in the work plan, or is there a more efficient way for us to look at these measures?
No, I think this is a good starting point where it lays out, okay, here's what's in the plan, what our intent is to do. And the work plan basically kind of covers this as an outline. Like, here's what's in the plan. There's $1 million for each, and here's how we plan to do it.
Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll through this, but everybody else also has this link to themselves, and feel free to review it as yourself. I'd prefer not to read it out loud to you if that's all the same to everyone.
And Matt, can I ask you a question? This is something I'm not familiar with the TCC. Have they done vegetative barriers in Stockton already, or is this will be new for a barrier?
The TCC project has not launched.
Okay, has not. But is there barriers or just trees in there?
There are no barriers to my knowledge that have been designed in Stockton.
Okay, because a barrier is a whole different animal. Trying to right away to do those things. So
for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think what we're really talking about is sub-consulting with people who have designed those before.
That is correct.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and just for reference, we are working with TCC funding to do some pretty interesting fluid dynamics modeling and other sort of analysis of vegetative buffers before they get installed in Oakland. So more than happy to share that info too.
Yeah, I think that would be a great, well, maybe we can, I mean, if you have that handy, maybe that's something we can get to tonight to really dive into what a vegetative barrier is. Or maybe that's in our next tree subcommittee meeting where we really dive into it. But for now, let's figure out what our guardrails are for working with the Air District and their money. So I'm going to stop sharing since everybody has a link to this and I've read that first measure. Anybody care to summarize, or, maybe Aaron, you want to tell us what, I mean, there's definitely some Air District jargon in there, partnership and incentive action. I don't know if you want to outline some of the restraints that are embedded in this measure.
I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, there's really not a lot of restraints. It's like, what does the committee want to do as we take to the bigger committee, right? The subcommittee. So you take it, hey, here's what the subcommittee wants to do. We take the bigger committee, say, okay, here's what we want to do. Everybody agree to this. I think the toughest part is going to be actually making sure we get the right way to plant these things. Would be the implementation of it. But as far as designing this, I don't foresee a big to do as I'm learning this over the last year from Fresno. It's been a wake up call for me because I wasn't what I do. I was replacing trains and trucks and stuff like that. So I'm getting educated myself on this stuff. But it's literally, let's give the money to people who know what they're doing, and let's let them do their work, and we will reimburse them for the work that's been conducted. Now, the committee here would steer that, say, yeah, I think Matt, the biggest thing is, where would the committee like barriers and trees installed? Now, the biggest thing I would think would be to leverage the projects already happening in TCC, right? So like, I'm gonna use examples. You have a bunch of trees planted on X street. You want to keep that going and make it further, so you double the amount on that street. Like, you know, what we're writing into Fresno has a TCC as well. Say, hey, we want a project partner that would leverage the work already being conducted in the areas in the TCC, and you want to extend those, or we want to start from scratch and do something completely different. From my perspective, you'd want to kind of carry on what's already been established as the infrastructure and kind of make it bigger. Now, I could be wrong on that, but that would be the easiest way to make sure this thing flows correctly and works. But that's why we're here talking. That's my simple, humble opinion. And that doesn't matter a whole lot. It matters what this committee wants to do. And just so I'm just want to make sure it's successful. I mean, that's why I want to make sure it's successful, the thing works, and we're all here for a purpose.
Yep. Yep. Anybody else have any impressions they want to share about what they just read, or where they see there being action items or toeholds or questions that need to be resolved?
Hey, Matt, this is Matt Diaz from the city of Stockton. I'm coming in late to this effort because I've kind of had a arm's length on TCC and my staff's been involved, but I did investigate this topic of street trees for other projects in the area. What I was going to do is send my notes to you or to the group in the chat for what we investigated for other areas and see if that helps any. I think the biggest distinction you'll have to do is kind of map the areas and determine whether it's right of way, non-right of way off the bat, so that you can figure out owner authorization and maintenance. Sounds like you guys are all experts in this, way better than me, but I'll just share my notes with what we learned on the other discussions, see if that helps. But I have to actually take off early for a hearing tonight, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for those notes. I hope the judge finds in your favor. I'm kidding. I hope you're not going to jail. No, where was I going with that? I think you've identified sort of the major issue, right? Who's going to let us play in their dirt?
That's right. That's number one.
Yeah. Will the city allow the state to help them plant trees in a place they already had identified that they need trees, like in the TCC project area? And will, vegetative barriers are about transportation facilities. And so we're talking about freeways and off ramps and interchanges.
Well, it also can be around, you can develop it around a school.
Yeah. So you can,
right?
you can do a barrier around a sensitive receptor site, or you can do a barrier at the emission source.
Which is tougher because now you're talking about Caltrans or the city. I mean, it's a very complex issue. So
and and I think so again, I believe the areas are probably being identified where these trees should be best suited for. But again, the distinction between private versus public, I think would help give us at least this where we go forward, because if it's private with easements, most like PG&E does not like trees, so they probably will not support this issue. So yeah, hopefully those points help. I'll still be probably involved in this, but I'm very just catching up, and I hope the notes I sent to the group help with this conversation. But nice to meet you all, and I'll talk to you guys later.
And then Matt, can I say something else too? I think it's very important. I think, did you take last time we talked, the map that we use for Fresno, as far as the committee would kind of look at the map of the community and put like a icon there. We would like trees here, like exercise, I think is very important, because maybe that's part of the RP as well. The committee would like trees planted along these locations, and part of the contract you would have with the contractor is, hey, you need to investigate these areas to see if it's possible to do this. So I think that's important as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is. And so maybe that's a good opportunity to jump to the map that the city has recently created, which overlays AB 617 and the TCC project area and their existing maintained trees. So we can actually see some canopy gaps to think about as we also look at vegetative barriers. But before we move on, Brent, you're my vegetative barriers person. You guys ever looked at efficiency of insulating a sensitive site versus trapping the pollution at the source and cost benefiting on that?
Yeah, we're actually constantly working on both of those things. I think the things that we find are that the sensitive receptors like schools and senior centers and hospitals are the ones where we actually see, like with or without vegetative buffers, the most impact from things like air quality. And so those normally drive where we like prioritize greening first. I think the second variable ends up being like how far do you end up falling off of the pollution source? So what we know pretty definitively is that like once you're 500 feet or maybe 1,000 feet away from a major pollution source, you get less benefit from the greening and the buffers. So I think it's kind of creating a stratified set of priority sites, which is that we want to first target, sensitive receptors that are closest to the emission sources and that can actually like have greening. And then after that, other priorities are like other people that are really close to the emission sources, because as you step further and further away, like you can do greening, but you shift from potentially being able to remove like up to 60% of the ultrafines and particulate matter down to like maybe 3 or 4% if you're just planting like in a distributed way throughout the community. So there's a really strong fall off from the like effect of the buffer. And so that's where you first target all the sensitive receptors near the freeway. Then you target like near freeway conditions that are near residential and other communities at large. And then after that, you do greening throughout the neighborhood, but that's more for heat island and other benefits.
Yeah, well, you just sort of enlightened my thinking on this. So I'm going to share my screen to show you guys what we're looking at, and we can sort of game Brent's input right there. So this is a new map shared that the city has created, sort of helps them overlay project areas, and anybody can look at this. And so for starters, you can see our AB 617 project area, which is just this part of Stockton. So I'll zoom in a little bit. And, we're very fortunate that all of our problems are in one area. So that's also where the Transformative Climate Communities map lands. And so to explain the TCC map, they got a limit, 5 square miles. And so this map was created to maximize its coverage of residential areas. So they weren't drunk when they were drawing this map, I promise. This was sort of the best they could get out of the surface area they were allowed. And so there's I think a lot of time to play with these two maps to explore where there's gaps. TCC can't forest its entire area, but it can focus on some certain places. Ooh, I should also put up the city maintained trees. Where did I see that? Did I scroll away? There we go. So, there's definitely gaps that need to be filled in the TCC project area. And then you can see really clear gaps outside of the project area that maybe AB 617 can help us address. Like this corridor here, it was a little too commercial, so it wasn't included in the TCC map. There is no funding to address this major interchange on I-5, this major source of pollution, according to the monitoring that we're doing. And so just as an example, not advocating for this space, right? This is the kind of place where 617 could help fill in the gaps. And then to Brent's points about, do we focus on a sensitive receptor site versus the pollution source? And in this case, the pollution source is the West Side Freeway. And we've got a sensitive receptor site right here at St. George Parish. Let me do a little marker. And so they're here, right, Brent? So what you're saying is we could wrap this school and protect these kids, but we're going to be filtering out a lot less particulate matter from the freeway. And we're kind of sacrificing all these people that are upwind in the windrows if we chose to just encircle sensitive receptor sites. Am I characterizing your description fairly?
Yeah, it's far more effective to get it as close as possible to the pollution source.
So if you had a friend in the Department of Transportation and money and science, you would get as close to this freeway as you could and knock down the dust with a full barrier.
Most definitely.
Okay. And so Well, I'm not sure, did I include this in the agenda? I'm gonna drop this in the chat so other people can fool around with this and think about spaces. So that's in the chat. Please let me know if you can't see it. I think there's another map that isn't just, well, transportation related air pollution is a major issue in Stockton and it continues to get worse. So I will go out on a limb and say addressing freeway related pollution feels like a priority to me with vegetative barriers. There are numerous stationary sources in this area that I have on a different map that could also be targeted with vegetative barriers. And one of the things we've talked with Jeff at the port about is helping to buffer specific facilities. That's an option for us here from my reading of the incentive measures. I have to say, I feel like the freeways and maybe even the railways seem like larger sources of pollution. We don't have comprehensive granular air monitoring just yet. We will a year from now, but I don't think we can wait that long before we prioritize transportation facilities over stationary facilities. So I've been talking a lot. Anything jumping out to anyone?
I think you nailed it mentioning the railways. I've often noticed those are really horrific dust corridors, especially on windy days. And that blows the dust really high up and it affects the whole, the whole city. There's just a lot of dust corridors that you notice driving around. I think those are another place to focus on.
A lot of fugitive dust, and importantly, Clifton, this is the diamond grade section of our UP BNSF railway interchange. And it's got a $300 million project to separate the grades and speed up trains. So they're going to be moving through here quicker. They swear nobody's going to put more trains on a more efficient track. I just know efficiency increases use. So we're probably going to see more trains. And what's cool about, well, not cool about that problem, is that there's an additional CARB funded study that's looking at Stockton and wants to study sound and particulate matter pollution next to areas of community concern. And so I think we could confirm your suspicion, Clifton, that the railways are, they're a source of combustion particulate matter, but also, fugitive dust from their big treeless, unvegetated landscapes. And I think, Brent, check me on this, but would you rather breathe dust from the ground or dust from a tailpipe? PM10 versus PM 2.5. They're both terrible for your health. But I feel like there's no, well, I'll shut up. You guys get what I'm getting at? Dust on the ground versus coming out of tailpipes?
For sure. With Stu's comment about the existing vegetative barriers along the freeway being burned down by unsheltered people, I've noticed that too. And maybe Brent can address this. I don't know if there's certain more fire tolerant landscapes that we can build with vegetative barriers, as far as maybe making them resistant to that.
You saying people are burning down the trees in the Caltrans setbacks?
Yeah, if you look at I-5 in the crosstown, they've burned a lot of the vegetation that was in there. Yeah. And the other concern would be septed. We've taken a lot of vegetative barriers out probably in the last few years due to people living in them, people burning them, stuff like that. Crime, the PD can't see through something or whatever. So that you have to kind of look around and be aware of it.
Great. So if we choose transportation facilities, we really have to evaluate which facilities can be secure project sites. Because we don't just get to live our lives and do things right. Housing's a commodity and everybody's living outdoors in Stockton. So this will be fun when we build parks too. Yeah, so, and I think, so I absolutely hear that. Definitely don't want new investment to be destroyed. I'll also just say that, inspection, monitoring and maintenance, inventory monitoring and maintenance are the keys to a healthy urban forest. And that's something that doesn't always exist in publicly funded forestry projects. But we have different money this time. And maybe we have money for trees out of TCC, and maybe we have money for inventory monitoring and replacement from AB 617. I've certainly thought about lots of ways in which the TCC budget could use help for maintenance and equipment, particularly irrigation installation and repair. And if this 617 budget could help furnish some of that, that seems like a good way to support one another. Aaron, you hearing anything I'm saying?
I hear exactly what you're saying, and I'm just gonna say this, I guess. I'll caution on just spending the money to support the TCC, because then you're not really getting any reductions that you can quantify and give back to ARB. If you know what I mean? So like, I would just caution against that this is just support of TCC, because I don't think they're gonna buy off on that. Just be honest with you.
And just so that everybody knows what Aaron's talking about is that some of our regulators have a really frustrating focus on emission reductions when they approve plans, as opposed to the programmatic stuff that I'm talking about taking care of a forest. It's tough to show emissions reductions for a person going there and doing the work.
Yeah, so I would just kind of leave it at that, I guess, is I think we do need to quantify something.
Yeah, for sure.
And if just to add something from the TCC side as well, it also, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, it comes with a whole bunch of its own restrictions, and it comes with its own approval process that can be quite, onerous. And I think the way I actually try to think about it is, what are the gaps that TCC didn't allow us to fulfill, and how can we use different sources of funding to go after those kind of unfunded gaps, as opposed to expanding kind of the work we're already doing. But obviously, I know we're talking about it in this context just to make sure that we're coordinating and using things as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, you bring up an important point, Grant. I mean, I've really been thinking about gaps in a geographical sense in the urban forestry renewal project. But I imagine there are other gaps in what we wished we could have done had we received the full TCC award.
Yeah, and you mentioned a few of them, probably number one being that the state did not allow us to use funding for existing tree maintenance. They only allowed us to use it for planting new trees. And obviously, there's a huge unmet need for maintaining the existing forest.
Yep.
Can you how much money was given to the city for the TCC grant? How big is that project? Just kind of curious, for just a perspective that I can have, I guess.
Yeah, we applied for 28.2 and we ended up winning 10.8. And then the amount for urban greening is 1.835 total, split between kind of a city project as well as a project through Lumina and Puentes.
So 1.8 is essentially 4 trees, essentially.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
With some respectable maintenance funding in there too. So it's not an entirely lame duck once they're planted, but yeah.
When we're looking at vegetative barriers, I mean, one of the handouts talked about the, you have hard barriers and you have planted barriers. Are there some areas like where the homeless are and that kind of thing that need more serious walls? And I know I don't think we can include that here because ours is designated as vegetative barriers, not a wall barrier. But isn't there someone from Caltrans on the call today? Or no? Did I hear that wrong?
Yeah, I don't think anybody from Caltrans is here today. I don't believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, one thing, there's Marlon, who is from Caltrans.
Oh, there you go.
Here. Sorry, I missed the question.
Oh, it was just about the difference between a structural barrier and a vegetated barrier, because we were concerned about folks burning down our investment. And even though a cinder block wall can be burned down, it takes commitment.
Yeah, it definitely does, but it's something that probably can be done. Most of our barriers are used for noise prevention. So That's our main purpose for a barrier. But in terms of vegetative barriers, I don't think that's something that necessarily has been explored from the state perspective and what this committee is trying to do. So I think there is opportunity at least to provide some direction to Caltrans and what the group desires. So
yeah,
we're all ears.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm thinking about some of the sound barriers you have near Conway Homes, which has some of our worst public health outcomes. And you got a rigid sound wall. And we see in some of the EPA materials there, vegetated walls. Brent, you still here? What do you think about vine covered walls? You got any data on particulate reductions?
Yeah, I mean, this this is something we've been actually looking at in collaboration with Caltrans and a couple other districts too, where one of the variables we're looking at is like, can greening budget overtake their budget for things like graffiti abatement, for example? So that's a great place where like vines are really affordable and really effective at greening. What we found is that like most of the air filtration benefit comes down to the total leaf area. And so you're never going to get as much leaf area on a vine as you are like a tree right next to the road. But there's a lot of conditions where doing those vines and doing those trellises could actually like maybe critically reduce maintenance costs for Caltrans and actually then like direct more funding to greening rather than graffiti abatement.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. And I imagine a furry vine covered wall flanked by a solid row of healthy trees is doubly beneficial to those of us that like to breathe pure air.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, I want to be mindful of time. We only scheduled you for 3 more minutes, but I think we've kind of we've captured, so let me just check for understanding that we've captured concerns about right of access. And I'm typing these in the chat and I'm spelling it wrong because I'm a little dyslexic. We've talked about concerns around emissions reduction potential and making sure that those are a consideration. Scott, I do see your notes here about the flexibility of 617 funding guidelines, and me, I intend to push those as far as I can. We've been crucified on a cross of emissions reductions when exposure reductions are the urgent thing I personally think we need now. Aaron, we're going to help you get that through Sacramento with a healthy exposure reduction component. Oh yeah, Richard, I see your comment about ground cover, and I also want to acknowledge your comment about working with unsheltered communities, which is something I have a lot of experience with. And I absolutely see potential there for working with folks, because these are often their homes. So do you want to say anything about that, Richard?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. And so then I'm also want to capture that we've talked about, and I'm really thinking about bullets that we'll share out at the CSC. We've captured sort of gaps in TCC funding that we could complement with, why can't I type? Because it's 12 hours of Zoom calls today. Gaps in TCC funding that can be patched with AB 617. Anything else that's jumping out to people as like sort of first strategic questions we need to resolve? Right of access, emission reduction potential, closing gaps in TCC funding.
Matt, I have one if I can share.
Please.
So when in the beginning of when I was working on the TCC project, we met with people who were doing community outreach work in the LA area. And one thing they had mentioned, or a word that they had coined to me, was tree trauma. So like some people within the community don't really want trees in their community because trees can drop branches or they can drop a lot of just leaves, and it can create like some, just like disturbance for people. And so, that might be something that we like run into if we're working with the community, and if there's some resistance with planting trees. So
Yeah, I've definitely encountered a lot of that when you're in a low income community where everybody's already got 2 jobs, giving them a tree to clean up after isn't exactly welcome. And then when you're in a low income city that passes along trip fall liability for broken sidewalks to the homeowner, that's another incentive to remove trees or resist new trees being planted. And so sidewalk trees for homeowners, I wrestle with this in my sleep. It was one of the reasons, Brianna, why I'm really looking at these public right-of-ways near big transportation facilities. And even if we just focused on one of these freeways in the windrows that's just dropping lots of pollution on communities like the one I showed you, we might be able to avoid that and reduce a whole lot of dust blow over. I'm sorry we're over time. Grant, I asked you to be here and then I didn't let you talk at all. Was there anything else that you wanted to share? And it is cool that I show people this map geo link. I think that's another thing I wanted to clarify.
No, nothing to add. I mean, I'll keep getting to these meetings just to make sure that we're finding opportunities to work together with TCC and AB 617 and all the other potential urban greening investments.
Awesome, great. Yeah, there's that new urban greening grant as well.
Matt, I would add to your notes, or maybe who would actually, the contractor, like what do you want from the contractor? What do you want them to do? I think maybe in your notes there.
Yeah, so the scope of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you really, like an outline, what do you really want them to do? I think is very, very important.
Yeah, well, I think, Aaron, I'm just going to come and put it all on the table. I want this money to support the community-based organizations that are already implementing urban forestry projects in the project area. I think they're going to be the people that can actually get these in the ground and who live in the community and can maintain them. The idea of me hiring West Coast arborists for $1 million to come in and plant trees and walk away, I don't know. That just feels a little bit funny to me.
No, I don't have an issue with that. Maybe I'll bring up one thing is maybe you have one of the larger community groups you contract with and they sub out smaller jobs. So like we're not writing, from the district standpoint, 10 different contracts. We do one contract with one person, they sub it out to do other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I also don't necessarily want to tie the city's hands by making them the prime contract either.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think that would be a heck of a thing to try to sort out. So that's super useful, Aaron. Does anybody have anything they want to add for the good of the order?
I just want to point out that you can let people know that if trees do damage their sidewalk, the city will foot the bill for the repair.
Hot dog, Chris.
They'll also take down the tree, but they'll fix the sidewalk.
That's great. That's better than my work in Richmond. They would pass the lawsuit on to you. So everybody cut down all their trees.
Well, I think that's important too, the fact that you choose the right, arborist or right, we're gonna call it, who choose the right type of tree that has not fibrous roots, they have tap roots. Like there's very important aspects. You just can't get any tree you want. It's gotta be the right tree, right? So
yep, for sure. And how you plant it and how you water it. You lead those roots with water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing we worked on in a project in Louisville was to actually create an endowment for people who couldn't afford to do tree maintenance. So that then was contributed by a bunch of other people who paid for permits and things, so that it covered people who couldn't afford it.
I love that you're always looking at funding instruments. That's definitely got to be done. So let's see, subcommittee members, CSC members, and technical folks. What I'll do is I'll try to type some of these notes that I captured here in the chat. and I will transfer them into that agenda doc. And how we'll use that agenda doc is as a running note platform. So we'll move the notes into the agenda and we'll move them down. And the next agenda will be the same sort of template starting from scratch with updated materials. And then I'll sort of write up a brief bullets, outcomes that we're going to recommend or that we're going to share out with the CSC. I don't think we're ready for any recommendations just yet, except for some of the ones, Aaron, that you provided us about, you know, right sizing contracts and those sorts of things. And we'll see how the CSC feels at the December meeting. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yeah, that sounds great. I think what I'll do is I'll take a look at the plans because there's two, they're different ones, right? Take a look at the plans and make some notes on those or make some modifications based on what we had today. So we're kind of adjusting as we go and look at it. Maybe there's no changes at all. I don't know. We'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I would love to see that and just do the find and replace and the map swap out.
Yeah, we'll do a track change on that, but I don't think after this meeting there's a lot to change. I think we're still right in line with what we thought.
Very cool.
And I'll just do a quick check-in with the subcommittee if we want to make this a recurring meeting. I'm happy to send that out. I will flag December's meeting with the third Tuesday. If we continue with that, would fall pretty close to the holidays. Just putting it out there.
Can I make a recommendation that this subcommittee is done until January? And that we finish with our recommendation to the CSC in December. And I think last time we talked about this, what Wednesday is this? Is this the second Wednesday?
The third.
We are the third Wednesday. Okay, that wasn't just language. So if we were to look at the third Wednesday in January.
Tuesday, Matt?
Tuesday. I'm so in such a hurry for it to be tomorrow. So the third Tuesday in January would be the day after Martin Luther King Day, January 18th.
Those I do, and I'll keep an eye for that. Those people.
Any objections?
Do, but they drive me crazy because they always put it at the end.
Oh, wait, we have, oh yeah. That's okay. It's not your guys' problem. So unless somebody objects, we'll schedule that and maybe Stephanie, when we send out the notification, if people freak out, you can tell me and we can, we'll circulate alternative meeting dates to anybody who bothered to sign in the sign-in sheet.
And it's the same people every time.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you for your help today. All right. Go home, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.